Hi, my name is Robert Mahar. I'm a designer and maker based in Los Angeles, California, and I'm going to show you how to create a God's Eye. Now, this is a variation on a childhood craft that most of us may have done at camp. I'm creating a little bit different base structure for it, so this is how you put it together. What I did to create a structure that looked like this one, where it's all flat on one level, is I cut out all 6 wood spokes out of a 3/16 inch dowel, and then I glued them onto a couple of wood rounds. These are about 1 inch in diameter. They're relatively inexpensive. You can find them easily at a craft supply store. And so to do this, I created spokes that were roughly 6 inches in length. So if you take your dowel, and again, utilizing either a cutting mat with a ruler on it or a yardstick, go ahead and measure out 6-inch increments. And you want 6 pieces in total. I can simply sort of cut into it, rotate the dowel slightly, and I get a relatively easy cut. Now my end is still going to be a tiny bit rough, so what I would do is take a small piece of sandpaper. This is a medium grit. Just to kind of get rid of any potential splinters at the end of that and smooth it out just a little bit. You can also kind of dull the edges a little bit so there's nothing sharp. But essentially you want to cut 6 of these. One other thing that you're going to want to make note of, depending on the type of yarn that you're going to use, you may want to create notches in your dowels. Here's an example of one that I went ahead and cut notches in. It's just going to give your yarn a couple of grip points along the length of the dowel, because otherwise the tension of stringing it at a certain point is going to cause most of the yarn to want to pull towards the center, and you're not going to get this nice even stretch of the yarn when it's wrapping around. So to do this, I simply take a dowel piece that I've cut out, take a craft knife, and honestly, I'm just cutting really shallow wedges into it. And I'm gonna do this at about inch intervals all the way down the length of the dowel. The other thing that you'll wanna do, and this is gonna make construction a little bit easier for you later on, is I would measure about a 1/2 inch from the edge of the dowel and create sort of a score line all the way along the exterior of the dowel, and then maybe notch it in just a little bit with your sharp blade. So I'm starting out with one of these 1-inch rounds, and I'm going to take 2 of my dowel pieces. Now I want to make sure that the ends where I measured in a 1/2 inch and made the little notch for the tying strings are not the portion that I'm gluing. I want those to be on the outside. So I'm going to take my inner portion and I'm going to put 2 dots of glue, let's see, directly across from one another on the wood piece. And then I'm going to take these 2 dowel pieces and I'm going to press them into the hot glue. And the wooden rounds that I'm using, as I mentioned, are about 1 inch in diameter. So I'm leaving probably 1/4 of an inch between the 2 wood pieces. And I'm just going to press them there, allowing the glue to cool for just a second and set up. Now for the remaining 4 dowels that we're going to adhere to our wooden disc, you need to be a little bit more conscientious of their placement. The goal here is to create equidistant spokes around the exterior. So we're still going to put 2 pieces that are directly across from one another, but I'm going to place 2 here and 2 here so that each of our little pie-shaped segments are more or less the same distance from one another. So again, I'm going to take a little bit of hot glue. I'm going to place it just opposite one another on our wood round. And then I'm going to press the 2 ends of 2 additional dowel pieces down into it. And I'm going to hold them steady just for a second. The hot glue dries really quickly, sets up really fast, but you do want to give it just that second to harden up. And now we're going to add our final 2 pieces. So our final structure is going to look a little bit like a wheel with equidistant spokes around the exterior. So now that I've set that up, you can see that's what the structure looks like. Now, just to give it a little bit more stability and make sure that the dowel stay in place, I'm going to go in and kind of fill in some of the spaces with the hot glue. And you can see I'm being a little bit generous with it. I'm filling in some of the spaces. You don't want to go overboard because you don't want it to, when you put the second piece on top, to squish out all over the place, but enough to sort of hold it steady. And then I'm going to take a second piece of the wood round and I'm going to place it directly on top like a little sandwich. And I'm going to press it down firmly and hold it for just a few seconds while the hot glue sets up. Now, if you do get some of the hot glue coming out the sides, not to worry. Once it's dry, you can go back in with your craft knife and sort of carve out some of that excess. So the way we're going to start is pick any one of your spokes, take the end of your yarn, and just tie a tight knot around one of those spokes. And I'll hold this up and show you, just so it looks like that. You've just got it tight. It doesn't matter which of the spokes, just go ahead and tie it on. And you can actually even leave this tail off to the side and we'll trim that. But the way the wrapping process goes is this. You want to go underneath the adjacent, wrap around it, over to the next one underneath, around it, to the next one underneath. And you can kind of see the pattern we're creating now. What we do want to do is we kind of want to push those loops that are wrapped down so that they abut that center piece. And you just kind of continue wrapping. Now, if you've got some of these tails and it's problematic for you, just go ahead and trim that off and then continue your wrapping process. This is a little bit of a meditative, it's going to take us a few minutes to get through it, but I really do love this process. And as you continue to build from the center, you start to see a pattern develop on one side that really does resemble a spider web. Now, as I mentioned, the notches that we made in the dowel are going to be helpful in sort of keeping the yarn in place as we wrap. It prevents it from bunching and sliding in towards the center. You're going to have less of an issue with that with thicker yarns versus the fine, thin yarn that I'm going to be using that almost is the same thickness as perhaps pearlized cotton or embroidery floss. So you can see on one side we're getting this ribbed effect, and on the opposite side it's starting to build a very even regulated surface. Now, I do want to show you, if you want to switch colors now between the two, give yourself a little bit of length, a tail, cut that, go to your second color, put the tail side by side and create a little knot. So you've got a little knot there. You don't need to trim that actually right away. Leaving it with a little bit of length is going to help us conceal it momentarily. So now I'm going to go back to my wrapping pattern, wrapping it around, and you can see it seamlessly then goes into the second color. You can get incredibly creative with the coloration that you use. So again, as you're wrapping, if you get some that are a little bit higher up on the dowel, you just want to periodically push them down towards the center. And then once we get to the point where we have notched the wood, that's going to act as a stopgap, and it's really going to hold it in place nicely. So like I said, with the thicker yarn, it does go a little bit quicker, but it still takes a little bit of time. I started with the thicker wool just to kind of give you an idea of the wrapping pattern. You can again see now that we've got about an inch on there, this beautiful sort of flat surface on one side, and then I think really the equally beautiful ribbed reverse side. Once you've completed your God's eye structure, you can ornament it with pom-poms on the ends, or what I like to do is use it as the central structure in a pająki chandelier. A pająki is a traditional Polish chandelier, and if you'd like to learn how to make one or even a pom-pom, you can watch my video on CreativeLive.